MusicalTalk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of MusicalTalk. I'm Thos Ribbits. Or am I? Well, actually I am, and I hope that's the answer you gave, because that is the first question in this year's annual MusicalTalk Merry Quizmas and a Happy New Earful. Our end-of-the-year quiz. Just a bit of fun to round off 2020, which is ironic as 2020 has not been a bit of fun, I imagine, in anybody's books. Well, I hope you know the routine. At the end of the year, we let our hair down, or in my case, remove my wig, and we listen to a number of the songs that you could have heard on episodes of MusicalTalk over the last year or so. And in between that, I'll be asking you a number of questions related to the ever-expanding world and history of musical theatre. Now, you can either take this quiz seriously and really assiduously apply yourself to answering the questions, or you can just listen along and see where my very strange, meandering set of questions takes us. And it is just meant as a light bit of fun for us all. So, let's get this show on the road. There are 19 more questions, which makes 20 in all if you count that very silly first one, and this is the very first of the proper questions. What fictional person links Stephen Sondheim, Fred Astaire and Gilbert and Sullivan? And whilst you're pondering that question, let's open up with our first song. It's from Patrick Stockbridge's excellent Ed Fringe the Musical, which is one of the many musical theatre shows from the last few years that you can still see on YouTube and other streaming services, in lieu of having been to the real Fringe this year because of its cancellation. The song is called Come See Our Show, and it's a perfect way to start this MusicalTalk quiz.
Yo, 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 what is up, Edinburgh?
Let me tell you a little story.
Chemical High with the Iron Brew crew.
Here we go, here we go,
Here we go.
here we go.
Come see a show, now come to my show. There ain't no other mother-loving place you can go. For the rest of the year, see the sights, ride my flow. But your life will be complete if you come to my show. Got my flyers in hand, got a spiel prepared. With my engaging eyes, I catch them unawares. Then out of the blue, shout a time in someone's face. 3:45 on Bristow Place.
What wares do you sell, I pray, do tell?
Such flowery words must be a thesp as well.
It's a modern adaptation of a Homer classic set in post-apocalyptic Spain. Most of it rewrapped it.
The man swaps flyers and returns to his cast. A version of the Odyssey.
He's playing the mast.
And the odds are pretty low that we'll try to attend. But one flyer down, move on, start again. Come see a show, no, come to my show. Ignore my doppelgangers all stood in a row. Whip out your wallet and splash down the dough, as we'll possibly break even if you come to my show.
Tell me about it.
Okay, a middle-aged couple wearing chinos and checks, with a map in one hand and a camera round their necks. Dazed and confused, they sift through the hordes. It is clear that these imposters have
Never trod the boards.
Accumulating flyers like flies to a turd. With smiles so sweet they hang on to each word. They say they've got plans to see a thing at the castle, with fireworks and cannonballs. What sort of arsehole would produce that?
It clicks.
What can you do when the lovable Americans are here for the tattoo? You bid them farewell and safe trip in UK, and return to the grind of promoting your play.
It's rhyming dictionary time.
It's always what time and where, and I'll try to be there. But the guys I ensnare seem to not really care. But I shouldn't despair, trust my charisma and flair. With a magnetic stare, I'll keep the public aware. But the mile is unfair, so let your melodies blare. Or chain yourself to a chair, or keep birds in your hair, or leave your breast bare. Coat yourself in Gruyere, be as extreme as you dare, and the better you'll fare. But we all speak hot air, and a purchase is rare. So don't rip and don't tear, give a flyer, sell a pair.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
Come
on, everybody, put your hands in the air.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
Even if you've just got one hand.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
That's it, look, that one-handed person is doing an excellent job.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
Oh, we got somebody throwing up over here.
Mic drop.
Well, there we are. A song by Patrick Stockbridge from Ed Fringe the Musical. And what of that first question? Well, the question was, what fictional person links Stephen Sondheim, Fred Astaire and Gilbert and Sullivan? And the answer is Alfred E. Newman. Now, you may or may not know that name, but Alfred E. Newman is a character who's most popularly associated with Mad magazine, which is a magazine I read assiduously as a teenager, and which I have recently returned to with great pleasure. And if you've heard in the news that Mad magazine is no longer in production, that's not quite true. It is now mostly reproducing old material, but it is still in publication, and there is still some new material in each edition. If you don't know who Alfred E. Newman is, go and look him up online. And that spelling for Newman, by the way, is Neuman. But let's break down that question to make the next 3 questions. So, question number 2 is, what links Fred Astaire to Alfred E. Newman from Mad magazine? And to give you some thinking time, let's hear a song from Kendall and Bowerfield's excellent The 12, which you could have seen at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in 2019, and was on the verge of being produced in America just before the coronavirus made theatre an unviable option. So I am hoping that we'll hear more of this show in the future. Here's one of its songs, Down at the Bottom of the Well.
She was bright and charming, blunt but otherwise disarming, with a carefree air and flair for who gives a fuck. She didn't talk about her past, and we started moving fast, and all the while I couldn't believe my luck. I was broke and broken, it's better left unspoken. We were both a mess, but Tess and I didn't care. We settled down in our new place, where the sunlight filled the space, and it was small, but it was something we both could share. She said we were stuck in a well, steep walls, mossy stone, and we'd help each other climb the rope when we couldn't climb alone. And we kept pulling the rope, we kept on holding on hope, hand over hand, together as a team. If we kept pulling the rope, we'd finally live our dream and quickly forget the way that we met down at the bottom of the well. I said, Tess, hey honey, now we've saved some money. What do you say we stay this way all our life? Let's finally both get clean and let nothing come between. And that's the day I asked her to be my wife. She said yes, we married, drugs and all of that got buried, 'cause life is tough enough without all that shit. But something in her snapped, and she suddenly felt trapped. And I found out she never could really quit. And I kept pulling the rope, I kept on holding on hope. Then I climbed down, but something tugged me back. I felt this pull on the rope, this sudden sense of slack. In that moment of hell, I watched as she fell down to the bottom of the well. When I'd catch her high, she'd promise she would stop. When I'd find her stash, she'd promise she would stop. I tried and tried, she lied and lied. She promised she would stop. Again and again. Again and again. But I kept pulling the rope, I kept on holding on hope. I never stopped or ever had a doubt. I kept on pulling the rope. I almost pulled her up, but the harder I'd yank, the deeper she sank. Down to the bottom of the well. And I kept pulling the rope. I kept on holding on hope, but nothing helped, and I began to sink. So I let go of the rope and stepped back from the brink. She kept pulling down, she wanted to drown down at the bottom of the well.
Well, welcome back. That was Down at the Bottom of the Well from The 12 by Kendall and Bauerfeld. And the question was, what links Fred Astaire to Alfred E. Newman? Well, this is a curious old thing. In the 1950s and 1960s, Fred Astaire had a series of 4 one-hour dance specials on American television. And his female dance partner for most of those was a woman called Barry Chase. And in the second one, which came from 1959 and was called Another Evening with Fred Astaire, for reasons which nobody quite understands, Fred decided that he wanted to dress up as Alfred E. Newman, and therefore had a very effective, and I have to say slightly disturbing, prosthetic mask of Alfred E. Newman created, which he then wore in a dance sequence where he, Fred, as Alfred E. Newman, danced with Barry Chase to Duke Ellington's Sophisticated Lady. Now, whilst you can't see that scene as originally intended on streaming services, there are some clips of it with new soundtracks overlaid, so you can get some idea of what it looked like. It's a very curious thing. And bearing in mind it was from 1959, Alfred E. Newman had only first started appearing in a significant role on Mad magazine covers from 1956, which I think goes to show how quickly that magazine took off in popularity stakes. In 1959, Fred Astaire was an absolute A-lister, so his decision to play Alfred E. Newman was quite a thing. Well, on to our next question, and once again it's related to that very first question I asked earlier. What links Gilbert and Sullivan to Alfred E. Newman? And whilst you're pondering that, let's hear a medley of songs from the Secretary turned CEO, arranged and performed by Daniel Dondi.
Oh, you accuse me of everything and anything. Oh,
You're not.
well, war.
You're but.
I was
Oh, my, yeah.
holiday and it is
You
of the
can't understand like that. You can't be insane.
It is not to stop, it is not to stop. I don't care, talk, talk.
Do you agree with
Do you
that?
agree with
I
it?
agree.
Am I to be
Is she
needed?
a Thos?
Is she her dad and I don't think so.
Is she in charge?
Is she her
Oh,
dad and I?
no, no. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, no, no.
You gave me £20 and you never asked for it back. Just deducted it from my salary. Such a generous boss.
I know.
Magnificent.
Munificent.
Benevolent.
Beneficent.
And you know, life is more expensive these days. My rent is way up, and my oyster card at the end of the month. Every day you put my feet in up.
I know. When I buy my hummus in Waitrose, it's like £2. Damn it. Where is my master?
I want a raise.
Grace? Are they?
I need a raise.
Are they? Serena?
I can't work anymore on minimum
Are you
wage.
trying to bankrupt me?
I do all the work on here and I deserve a raise.
Well, that's it. You're fired. Got it. How I say. You can take your nail polish, your fluffy pens, and your glossy bum, and get out of my offices this instant. I can stand your talk, your walk, or your stupid face anymore.
You can't find me, you can't find me. Shut up, shut up, shut up. You can't find me. And I would pay corporation tax or national insurance.
I'm nothing without you. Serena, you're a part of me. You are a very heart of me, such a part of me, oh, the heart of me. Oh, poor defenseless creature, what will become of you? What will become of you? It is so gibberish to me, it is so gibberish to me, it is so gibberish to me. All these numbers, all these tables, Selena, I just don't know, a coward, I have no bones, no bones.
Well, there we are, a medley of songs from the secretary turned CEO. Now, the question was, what links Gilbert and Sullivan to Alfred E. Newman? Well, this is quite a bit of detective work, but the image of Alfred E. Newman, even though he didn't bear that name, was a well-known trope throughout the 20th century, and indeed at the very end of the 19th century, before he was appropriated by Mad magazine. And it now seems to have originated from a play which first premiered in London in 1894, and which then transferred over to America later that year. And it was called The New Boy by a writer called Arthur Law. It was a comedy, and in it was a character who spoke in a way very similar to Alfred E. Newman's famous "What me worry" catchphrase, with phrases such as "What's the good of anything? Nothing," which could easily have come out of the mouth of Alfred E. Newman. The interesting thing here is that the cartoon character is now thought to have come from the advertising for that play, The New Boy, when it came out in America in 1894. Because the first actor to play the central character of The New Boy, on whom Alfred E. Newman is based, made himself up with red hair, freckles, and in the course of the production loses a tooth, which is the very image of Alfred E. Newman we have today. So it's very clear that Alfred E. Newman as an image came from that advertising for The New Boy in 1894 in America. What is less clear, and this is the connection with Gilbert and Sullivan, is there are no photographs or reproductions surviving of the advertising for the London production from earlier that year, where the character was played by Weedon Grossmith. So we don't actually know whether the American actor was copying the British actor, or whether the American actor had created a completely new look for that character in America. But the important thing here for my question is that in London, the Alfred E. Newman character in The New Boy was played by Weedon Grossmith, who, along with his brother George Grossmith, wrote the amazing book The Diary of a Nobody. But of course, George Grossmith, the brother of Weedon, was the man who created many of the great principal comic roles in the original run of the Gilbert and Sullivan Savoy operas. He was the very first Sir Joseph Porter, the very first modern Major General, the very first Coco in The Mikado. So that is the link that Alfred E. Newman has directly with Gilbert and Sullivan. And so the last of the mad-related questions in this quiz is what links Alfred E. Newman to Stephen Sondheim? And we'll find out after this comic song from the 17th century, sung for you by David William Hughes, called The Grasshopper and the Fly, which was included in the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Show of 2019 called Wit and Mirth.
A grasshopper and a fly, in summer hot and dry, in eager argument were met to talk about priority. Says the fly to the grasshopper, from mighty race I spring. Bright Phoebus was my dad, 'tis true, and I eat and drink with a king. Says the grasshopper to the fly, shucks, rogues are still preferred. Your father may be of a high degree, but your mother was just a turd. That's Henry Purcell and Paul Surf in 1698.
There we are, The Grasshopper and the Fly by David William Hughes. And as David himself likes to say, that is one of the earliest recorded equivalents of the "your mum" joke. But my question, before that of course, was what linked Stephen Sondheim to Alfred E. Newman, of Mad magazine fame? Well, in 1966, Mad magazine was so popular that it spawned a comedy musical revue called The Mad Show, which opened in the New Theatre in New York City on the 9th of January 1966 and ran for 871 performances. And Alfred E. Newman was credited with conceiving and directing the entire production in all the show's publicity, although it was actually done by a man called Stephen Vinever, who was a British director. the most famous song from The Mad Show is called The Boy From, which is a splendid parody of The Girl from Ipanema, written with music by Mary Rodgers and lyrics by Stephen Sondheim. But Sondheim used a pseudonym. Can you tell me what it is? And that's the fifth question. And whilst you're pondering that, we'll have another song from David William Hughes, this time from his 2018 Edinburgh Festival show, which featured Tudor music. And here is a genuine 16th century song sung by David called Tobacco.
Tobacco, tobacco, sing sweetly for tobacco. Tobacco is like love, oh, love it, for you see, I will prove it. Love maketh lean the fat man's tumour, so doth tobacco. Love still dries up the wanton humour, so doth tobacco. Love makes men sail from shore to shore, so doth tobacco. 'Tis fond love often makes men poor, so doth tobacco. Love makes men scorn all coward fears, so doth tobacco. Love often sets men by the ears, so doth tobacco. Tobacco, tobacco, sing sweetly for tobacco. Tobacco is like love, oh, love it, for you see, I have proved it.
There we are, Tobacco, sung by David William Hughes. I can tell you that that is the oldest song that you'll be hearing today. All further songs will have been written after the death of Elizabeth I. And the question was, what was the pseudonym used by Stephen Sondheim when he wrote the lyrics for the song The Boy From The Mad Show 1966? He called himself Esteban Rio Nido, which translates from the German, via Spanish, to Stephen River Nest. Now, I say that's the pseudonym that he used for The Mad Show, but it's actually the pseudonym that he used on the songwriting credit. In the actual playbill for The Mad Show, the lyrics for that song were credited to a man called Nom de Plume. Well, as I've already mentioned, the woman who wrote the music for that excellent song was Mary Rodgers, and she is famous as the composer of another well-known American musical, which is an adaptation of the Hans Christian Andersen story from 1835 called The Princess and the Pea. But what is the name of the musical that derives from that story, with the score by Mary Rodgers? And to give you approximately 4 minutes of thinking time, let's hear a song called Funny Little Cabaret from Bereavement the Musical by Jeff Carpenter and Maureen O'Hagan.
It's a funny little cabaret we go through. The stage is open and the players are in full view. There's a part for you and you will have to play it. The script is written, it's just words you've got to say it.
And oh, don't think it's not strange. Death will bring you change. You've got another thing coming. Don't think you'll be saved once it's been engraved. You've got another thing coming.
So bring the lights up and act nothing less than certain,
Because bereavement never brings the final curtain.
It was easy when we looked for a conclusion. Make it easy, never shatter the illusion. Take your bow, face the music now. You've got
come to.
There's a part for you and you will have to play it.
It's bereavement and we've just got to obey it. And oh, you'll learn all the blues. Nobody improves. You gotta know the things you're made. And oh, come and face your crowd. Do the theatre round. You've got another thing coming.
It's a funny little cabaret we go through.
It's a funny little cabaret, it stars you.
It's a funny little cabaret to stay true.
Funny little cabaret.
Funny Little Cabaret from Bereavement the Musical, which you could have seen at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in 2012, and which you can still see on YouTube and other streaming services. So there's still a chance to catch up with it. And to catch up with our last question, what was the name of the Hans Christian Andersen-based story that Mary Rodgers musicalised in the late 1950s? It was called Once Upon a Mattress. Based on The Princess and the Pea, it originally ran for 244 performances upon opening on the 11th of May in 1959 at the off-Broadway theatre, The Phoenix. Now, the star of that show was Carol Burnett, and we'll be mentioning her again later in the quiz. But the next question is, how many times has the musical Once Upon a Mattress been made in a direct-to-television version? And to bridge the gap between my asking that question and my telling you the answer to it in just a few minutes, let's hear one of my favourite songs from the last few years of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. It's called So Bohemian by Nearly Needs a Holiday, from the Edinburgh Festival show Nearly Needs a Holiday, the musical.
This room will be visited 1,000 years from now by people who are curious to see this well-beloved attraction in artistic anthropology. And when they visit our humble quarters, they cannot help but think that it takes a truly dedicated artist to sleep under the sink. How eccentric, how romantic, how bohemian. Small housing is the key. How bohemian to creativity. All great minds live modestly. Mozart, Van Gogh, or Dostoevsky, Charles Bukowski, and me. How bohemian. A mattress on the floor. How bohemian. Feel the wind under the door. I'll get some 19th century lung infection, which is obviously curable with modern medicine, but still, I will look worryingly thin. How bohemian. I don't even have a chair. How bohemian. Think I should grow my armpit hair. I'm a free spirit. I'm a beatnik. I'm a cabaret singer in the Weimar Republic. How chic. How artistique.
So Bohemian by Nearly Needs a Holiday. And my question was, how many times has Once Upon a Mattress by Mary Rodgers been produced in a direct-to-television version since it was first produced in the theatre in 1959? And the answer is 3 times, which strikes me as a lot. It was done in 1964, again in 1972, and then yet again in 2005. And rather splendidly, Carol Burnett, who was the princess in the original version on stage in 1959, reprised that role in both 1964 and 1972, and then appeared as the Queen character in the 2005 version. So she was in all 3 television adaptations. And interestingly, the 1972 version, that's the middle one, also featured a very young Bernadette Peters and Ron Hussman, who MusicalTalk has interviewed in the past. Well worth digging out that interview. But let's go on to the next question. Carol Burnett was a great American comedienne, but she was also a great doyenne of musical theatre. and in some ways can be seen as the successor to Martha Ray, who was a very successful comedian in her own right and appeared in a lot of musicals in the generation beforehand. Well, Carol Burnett and Martha Ray recorded an album together of light-hearted duets called Together for the First Time. One of the songs on that album was from Sweet Charity and includes the lyric, "That fancy bed you prayed for, not only bought but paid for. Dream we sign the lease, leave a small deposit, 3 1/2 rooms with a walk-in closet. We'll ask the local jet set to dine on our dinette set." What is the name of that song? And just to confuse you, whilst you're thinking about that, let's hear a different song by a totally different composer. This is the opening song with the introduction by Sue Casson to her masterful work, Dreams of Peace and Freedom.
It is that which we forget, but should remember, that haunts us. As we drop our guard and let ideas that matter slip from our minds, the ghosts of history that will not lie still rise up to unsettle us. This is a ghost story and an exorcism. The ghosts of 20th century fascism will not desist, nor their victims, nor, happily, the ghosts of those who rebuilt after the desolation. They will reawaken the memory, assuage the fear. David Maxwell Fyfe spoke these words in Brussels in 1947.
Yet I'm haunted by some words from a song to which we used to listen in more carefree days. On fait de ces mots et simplement on les oubliait.
Ne dis pas toujours qu'un amour c'est un blasphème. On ne sait jamais si désormais vraiment on aime. On fait des mots et simplement on les oublie. Ne dis pas toujours qu'en amour rien ne voulait.
Having propounded high ideals in defeated Germany, I feel the responsibility for doing my part to see that they're not forgotten by the victors.
Do not say always, for in love it's a delusion. Rather say for now, for time will show it's an illusion. Promises you make, and oh so simply you forget. Do not say always, always, for in love just as in life nothing binds you.
Ici-bas, tout cesse et tout laisse, même du bonheur on se lasse. Dans d'autres bras en soi, en frisson, puis sans remords on s'abandonne.
Do not say always,
c'est un blasphème.
Rather say for now, for time will show it's an illusion. Promises you make, and oh so simply break them. Do not say always,
dis pas toujours, car en amour
nothing binds you.
Sue Casson introducing the first song from Dreams of Peace and Freedom. And that was also a little bit of a clue, because I asked you beforehand what was the name of the song from Sweet Charity which had that lyric which included the wonderful couplet, "We'll ask the local jet set to dine on our dinette set." And the song was called Baby Dream Your Dream, with a lyric by Dorothy Fields. And what was the clue, you say? Well, Sue Casson's piece was Dreams of Peace and Freedom. It was all about dreams. Sadly, the song Baby Dream Your Dream, which I think is a marvellous song, was cut from the film version of Sweet Charity. Which leads me on to our very next question. Talking of the film version of Sweet Charity, who directed it? And we'll have another song from Sue Casson's Dreams of Peace and Freedom now, called All Will Be Well.
On his return from Nuremberg, Maxwell Fyfe pursued these themes of natural law, natural justice and human rights in papers and speeches.
There is in each of us a sundial factor of our mentality. We are inclined only to count the sunny hours. Moreover, after exhausting wars, men tend to suffer a weariness of mind. This lassitude can make them shrink away from facing the limitations of human nature. It can produce a facile skepticism about their evil deeds. New generations dislike reading the history of the gas chambers, and so the fact that men claiming to be civilized put millions to death in the gas chambers slips from history. Most people approach the subject of war crimes trials fundamentally either as a cynic or an idealist. This is, I think, because in essence the case for or against trying war criminals depends on that controversial subject which has become succinctly known as human rights. Your cynic says, human rights, there are none. Your idealist, however, takes the view that there are certain rights and freedoms, not created by lawyers, but to which mankind as such is heir, and which cannot be alienated. It is a conception akin to the idea of the law of nature, which has had such a wide influence on relationships in past centuries, although now somewhat outmoded. The idea of fundamental human rights is one in which I firmly believe.
We have found safety with all things undying, the winds and morning, tears of men and mirth, the deep night, birds singing and clouds flying, and sleep and freedom and the autumnal earth. We have found safety. We have found safety.
If our unfortunate generation has proved one thing, it has demonstrated that the barbarian is not behind us, but always underneath us, ready to rise up.
Deep night, morning, sleep and freedom. Deep night, morning, sleep and freedom. Deep night, morning, and sleep and freedom. Deep night, morning, sleep and freedom. Deep night, morning, sleep and freedom. Deep night, morning, and sleep and freedom. Deep night, morning, sleep and freedom. We have found safety with all things undying, the winds and morning, tears of men and mirth,
The introduction and then follow-on song All Will Be Well from Sue Casson's Dreams of Peace and Freedom. And if you want to find out more about that show, you can. It's been relaunched this year in a magnificent new recording, and you can find that online. But the question I asked was, in the film version of Sweet Charity, who was the director? And the answer is the famous choreographer Bob Fosse, but he was also a director as well. So let's stay with Sweet Charity for a bit, as I ask you our very next question. The film of Sweet Charity, directed by Bob Fosse, was produced in 1969 and was of course based on the comedy musical of the same name, with a book written by Neil Simon from its original stage production in 1966. But did you know that it is in turn based on a film from Italy called Knights of Cabiria, which was originally made in 1957 and was directed and co-written by which legendary director? So that question again. What's the name of the director who made the film Knights of Cabiria, from which the musical Sweet Charity eventually sprang? And this question marks the sequence in today's episode of Musical Talk, where we start to hear a number of songs by Thomas F. Arnold, the noted composer who was responsible for The House of Edgar, one of the Musical Talk picks of the fringe from the last few years. And here's my favourite song from that show, The Tell-Tale Heart.
I am dreadfully nervous, but I am not mad. Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story.
When I first had the faintest of foulest of thoughts, unfeasible to say, but once lodged in the back of my restless brain, it would haunt me night and day. The old man never harmed no man, but it was by his hand that I thrived. Yet I took delight in the right to ensure that by night he would no longer survive.
He had never wronged me, he had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold.
Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You would not judge if you saw how I planned. Madmen know nothing, they know not a jot. Nervous I may be, but a madman I'm not. Yes, manic I may be, but a madman I'm not. So for 7 nights by lantern light I hid outside his door, and the time was spent to sharpen senses, sense but fearless, nervous of the nearness of the task that I perform. Lantern aloft, I slowly pushed the lonely door aside. With disbelief I saw him wake from his sleep, his eyelids peeled back wide. Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You would not judge if you saw how I planned. Madmen know nothing, they know not a jot. Nervous I may be, but a madman I'm not. Yes, manic I may be, but a madman I'm not. Subduing my pride, I knelt down by the side and gazed upon the source of my rage, of my pain, of my fear and disdain, of an evil convent course. From his mouth came too late to unseal his fate a single final cry, as with his last living look he fixed me with that pale blue vulture's eye. His pulse rang like a drum beat of thudding bass and marching snare, and it faded into the distance as I entered the vulture's glare. The night waned, and I worked hastily but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then tore up 3 planks from the flooring and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye,
not even his, could have detected anything wrong. As the bell sounded the hour, I heard a knocking at the door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to fear? There entered 3 men, officers of the police, who said they had heard a shriek. I told them the old man was away in the country, and bade they search his house well.
Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You would not judge if you saw how I... Like a pocket watch in cotton, the softest ticking caught my ear, and it rose like a double-time bass drum beat, marching ever near. And like a disease of pained unease took root deep in my gut. It seeped and spread and oozed and wept like a foul and festering cut. As it rose running red like cloyd clotting blood blubbing back at the back of my throat, it mixed with the deafening dead man's pulse to produce a pounding note. The chaotic chord crescendo, it was the devil's art. I fell to my knees before the police of a world by his telltale heart.
Ah, one of my favourite songs, The Telltale Heart by Tom Arnold, and his magnificent musical, The House of Edgar. But the question before that, if you remember, was what was the name of the famous, legendary in fact, Italian director who was responsible for The Knights of Cabiria, a 1957 film from which Sweet Charity eventually was created? And the answer is Franco Fellini. And if someone had told Franco Fellini in 1957 that in a mere 12 years his film would have ended up with Sammy Davis Jr. playing a sham religious leader while singing the song Rhythm of Life in an indoor car park, he might have given you a second look. However, Franco Fellini later made a film in 1963 called 8½, which was a semi-autobiographical film, and then was also later adapted loosely as a musical. So what was the name of that musical? And let's hear another song from The House of Edgar by Thomas F. Arnold. This is an adaptation of The Raven.
Distinctly I remember a dark and cold December, when each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. With haste I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books relief of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore. For the rare and radiant maiden, who the angels named Lenore, it was then I heard a gentle rapping at my chamber door. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. In there stepped a stately raven, summoned by the name Lenore, and it perched upon my chamber door and whispered, "Nevermore." The raven sitting lonely at my lintel did speak only that one word, as if her soul in that one word she did outpour. Nothing further than she uttered, not a feather than she fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow you will leave me, my hopes have flown before. You will leave me as she left me. Nevermore. Then I felt the air grow denser, like the aura of a spectre, and I heard the spirit's footfalls tinkle on the tufted floor. Wretch, thy God have lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee. Give me respite, give me mercy from my memories of Lenore. Spare me this mercy, so I forget my lost Lenore. Oh, spare me this mercy. Leave no black bloom as a token for that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quoth the raven. Nevermore. and the raven never flitting still is sitting, and the lamplight, oh, her streaming throws her shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow shall be lifted nevermore.
Ah, The Raven from The House of Edgar by Tom Arnold. And my question was, what's the musical that was ultimately derived from the 1963 semi-autobiographical film by Franco Fellini called 8½? Well, the name of the musical, and this always makes me laugh, is just that little bit more. It's 9, which was a musical originally created and written by Maury Yeston as a class project in Lehman Engel's Musical Theatre Workshop in 1973, later developed further with a book by Mario Fratti, and then again with a further book by Arthur Kopit, with music and lyrics of course by Maury Yeston, to create 9. And whilst we're on the subject of semi-autobiographical films, which become musicals, let's talk about a semi-autobiographical film which was a musical. This one takes us back to Bob Fosse, who created this musical semi-autobiographical film in 1979. But what was it called? Can you tell me? And thinking time will be provided on this occasion by the third of our trilogy of House of Edgar songs, The Haunted Palace.
In the greenest of our valleys, by fair spirits tenanted, once a fair and stately palace, radiant palace reared its head in the monarch Thos dominion. It stood there, no mortal's high opinion, about a fabric half so fair.
Gentle air that dallied in that sweet day, rampant bloomed and pallid, a window door went away, and tall with pearl and ruby glowing was the pretty palace door, through which came flowing, and sparkling evermore, a tree of echoes whose sweet duty was to see. The wit and wisdom of the king.
But evil things in robes of sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate, and as mournful nevermore sheltered upon him desolate,
and run about his home the glory that lost and dim remembered story.
It's but a dim remembered story of the olden time entombed. And travellers now within that valley through redlands and windless sea, past falls that move fantastically to the most discordant melodies, like the ghastly rapid river through the pale dawn. The pages from the shop forever, they laugh, but smile no more.
Haunted Palace from The House of Edgar by Thomas Arnold. And the name of the Bob Fosse autobiographical film, that's also a musical from 1979, All That Jazz. It's ultimately a jukebox musical, and one of the songs is called Everything Old is New Again, which we used as the title of an episode of Musical Talk earlier in the year. It's a wonderful phrase, that. However, the film All That Jazz also features a song from 1923, in fact a standard, called Who's Sorry Now?, which is a popular song with music written by Ted Schneider and lyrics by Bert Kalmar and Harry Ruby. Now, that song has a long history in musicals and film. For example, it appeared in the last proper Marx Brothers film called A Night in Casablanca from 1946. But it was also used in a 1950 Fred Astaire film, which was in itself a loose biopic of Kalmar and Ruby, the lyricists in that song's case. What was the name of that film? It's one of my favourites. Here's a song to bridge the next 3 minutes.
Every street lamp's been ignited, every horse is tethered tight, every shutter has been shuttered, every door's locked for the night.
Every eyelid's lost its balance and slumped down like dominoes. Little dreams dance round the little heads of people as they doze.
Pity not the tramps and beggars, but those with comfort in their beds, who when they wake will only see their ceiling overhead.
They'll miss the nimbus cruising sideways like a boa across a string, or the change in constellations from the winter to the spring. Moonlight beckons, begs me fly away. Darkness laughs and holds me here to stay. I'm just 1 in 6 billion, 6 billion on one pointless rock, running rings around one pointless sun, which is 1 in 5,000 full stars we can see, just 1/50,000,000th of our galaxy. Can I sit in your orbit or dance on your rings? Can I spin like some other celestial thing and fly? Fetch the paintbrush, fetch the palette, fetch the blacks, the blues and whites. Pretend that there's a point in painting starry, starry nights. A night that's just like any other, forced to fit our picture frame. Run off half a dozen studies that all end up just the same. Scientists wonder, sailors forge on fast. Artists capture things already past. I'm just 1 in 6 billion, 6 billion on one pointless rock, running rings around one pointless sun, which is 1 in 5,000 full stars we can see, just 1/50,000,000th of our galaxy. I'd put you on canvas, but would you resent being tied to the ground, which you chose to neglect? You fly. 1 in 6 billion, 6 billion on one pointless rock, running rings around one pointless sun, which is 1 in 5,000 full stars we can see, just 1/50,000,000th of our galaxy. Oh, God only knows just what I would do to have wind on my fingers and stars in my shoes. I fly. They say I'm slow but quick to anger, that I blaze but I'm not bright. What else is there for me to do except paint starry nights?
There we are, Tom Arnold's song The Starry Night, which of course is connected with the Vincent van Gogh story. And my question, what's the name of the 1950 Fred Astaire film? which is a loose biopic of Kalmar and Ruby's life and features the song Who's Sorry Now? It's called 3 Little Words. And such a favourite with me is it, that film, that I watched it as my Christmas treat to myself last year in 2019. Now, the film starred Red Skelton and Fred Astaire, who, 9 years later, would dance with Barry Chase whilst dressed as Alfred E. Newman. Isn't it marvellous the way these things make a perfect circle? However, Barry Chase appeared in a ballet sequence based on The Little Mermaid in a Hollywood musical, which was once again a very loose biopic of someone else we've mentioned today already in this episode. The film is named after that person, but can you tell me what that film is called? And I'll give you a clue, it's got a score by Frank Lesser. And here's another song from Tom Arnold, Eyes as Blue as the Sky.
I know a boy who has eyes as blue as the sky. I know a boy who has eyes as blue as the sky and lips soft as silk. I know a boy with cheeks smooth and bare, not a wrinkle or hair. He had lips soft as silk and the thrill of a boy who had eyes as blue as the sky.
I knew a boy whose hands were strong like a vice. I knew a boy I only knew twice.
But twice would suffice.
I know a boy with hands like a vice.
But twice would suffice. He had cheeks smooth and
not a
bare,
wrinkle
not a
or
wrinkle
hair,
or
and
hair, and
his
his
lips
lips
soft
soft as
as silk,
silk.
and the thrill of
That
a
boy who had eyes as blue as the sky. You can tell me that I dreamed it, but I never dreamed a dream so vivid.
Isn't it strange? Oh, isn't it queer to think it's now been 60 years? Nostalgia takes my breath away. Rose tints restrict my view. When all you see are pinks and reds, you start to miss the blues. And to think when I was younger, I'd begrudge the grands who'd say
we would have sung it louder,
and we would have danced it faster,
and we would have dreamed it bigger, and we would have done it better in my day.
We would have done it better in my day. We would have done it better. I knew a boy in my youth and in my defense. I knew a boy, I knew him in the past tense, if that even makes sense. I knew a boy in whom I could confide, who would be by my side. He was here, gone tomorrow, like the turn of the tide. He had cheeks smooth and bare, not a wrinkle or hair, and his lips soft as silk, and the thrill of a boy who would leave like the rest in due time. But his eyes,
he has eyes as blue as the sky.
Well, welcome back. The question I asked you before that wonderful song by Tom Arnold was, what is the name of the film based on the life of the person who originally wrote The Little Mermaid? And the answer is Hans Christian Andersen, which, when it was a film, featured Danny Kaye and also Farley Granger. And perhaps more pertinently for today's conversations, Barry Chase as one of the dancers in the ballet sequence based on The Little Mermaid. Well, as we're weaving a bit of a web between many of the people we've mentioned in today's episode, let's find out more about the Marx Brothers, who worked with Kalmar and Ruby in the second Marx Brothers film from Paramount called Animal Crackers, originally produced in 1930. But what was the name of the famous composer who wrote the score for their first Marx Brothers film, The Coconuts, released in 1929? And as is traditional, let's hear a song to give you some thinking time. It's from Michael Gordon Shapiro's brand new and splendid musical Gideon and the Blunder Snorp. And this song's called Not Impossible.
Not impossible. Not impossible. I heard it distinctly, that's what he said, and now I can't get the words out of my head. Not impossible. That means possible. That's better than who knows or no one can say. That means there's a way. So I've just gotta figure out what I can do, so that I can be part of the Cavaliers too. Can you imagine it? Being an assistant to an assistant to an assistant to a real Cavalier, helping the helpers of the helpers when danger is near, acting with bravery, being the first into danger and the last to retreat, aiding the fight against murderous hordes, maybe assisting with carrying swords, riding the kingdom and safeguarding farmers and lords. Not impossible. Tricky, but not impossible. They must need an extra helper or 3. Why can't one be me? I've just gotta come up with a thing I can do, so that I can be part of the Cavaliers too. Sometimes when I ride, I start to lose track of the rest of the world, and it feels like the wind is challenging me to a race. And it's just the rhythm and the bounce of the road as we pick up the pace. First I bring her to a trot, and then a trot becomes a canter, and a canter is a gallop, and we're gone. And the world turns into colors like a spell from an enchanter, and it feels like I'm floating incredibly high, like I'm jumping right over the sky. Yeah! Not impossible. What I want's not impossible. I may be a peasant stuck with a chore, I may be a commoner sweeping the floor, but I can be more. I have just gotta figure out what I can do, so that I can be part of the Cavaliers too.
That was Not Impossible from Gideon and the Blunder Snorp by Michael Gordon Shapiro. He was a wonderful composer, and so is the wonderful composer responsible for the score of the very first Marx Brothers film, The Coconuts in 1929, which was my last question. Well, the answer is it was Irving Berlin. Although, in fairness to him, it's not one of his best scores at all. In fact, the best known song from it is a song called The Monkey Doodle Doo. And there are some modern recordings of that song, but it's not one of the best Irving Berlin scores you'll ever hear. However, although that film, The Coconuts, has a score by Irving Berlin, Chico Marx has a customary piano solo in that film and doesn't play a Berlin number at all, but one by Victor Herbert, the great writer of operettas in the first half of the 20th century and even the end of the 19th century. The song is called A Gypsy Love Song from Victor Herbert's 1898 operetta, which was called The Fortune Teller. So the next question is, what musical features a pivotal role for a fortune teller called Zoltar that has a song that mentions Parcheesi? Well, if you're looking for something to take your mind off thinking about that question, here's something. It's the song Royalty by Michael Gordon Shapiro from Gideon and the Blunder Snorp.
No. The kingdom is comprised of over 19 million subjects, from the merchant to the fletcher to the peasant to the clerk. All of them united by a deeply held conviction that they play a vital role within the fabric of our nation. Each of them a helper, each of them a pillar, each of them a stanza in a rich and endless song. There's only one hitch. They're wrong! No one matters unless they are royalty. Royals govern the land and the sea. They're loved and admired, no voting required. For true inner worth is a matter of birth, and the world puts us where we should be. See the farmer at work with his crops. We trust him with pigs and we trust him with slops. But that is the point where his expertise stops. We don't quiz him on music or law. See the baker with oven and plate. His bread-making skills we can hardly debate. But we keep him well clear of matters of state. Can you see him in charge of a wedding or war? All society hinges on royalty, gladly heeding their every decree. And don't mean a thing if you ain't got that king in your family line. In fact, it's a sign that the world puts us where we should be. See the queen, so lovely and regal, she tells us what's legal. Oh, queen, your enemies flee you. How lovely to be you, how noticed, how valued, how seen. Here's a noble girl, clever and bored. She's brought to events where she's largely ignored. She wears what they give her, she does what they say. She has some ideals, but she's told that they get in the way. But she will inherit the queendom one day. Then I'll matter because I'll be royalty. I'll be valued and I will be free. I'll speak imperiously, be taken seriously. So we wait for that fortunate date, and we're ushered by fate to our proper estate. It'll be rather great when the world puts us where we should be. Oh, I should not have told you all that.
There we are, Michael Gordon Shapiro's Gideon and the Blundersnort song Royalty. And my question was, what musical features a pivotal plot role for a fortune teller called Zoltar? And the answer is Big, the musical. And as I mentioned, there is a song that features the word, and indeed the game, Parcheesi. And the song's called Do You Wanna Play Games? Which segues into Stars, Stars, Stars. Now, in Big the Musical, the fortune teller was called Zoltar. Now, that's also the name, coincidentally, of the principal villain in the cartoon series from 1978 called Battle of the Planets, which, when it aired on television in Britain and America and in the West, featured the voice talents of Alan Young, who's a doyen of cartoons, and appeared in a Disney film in 1986 with Vincent Price. Now, this film had a score by Henry Mancini, including two songs called The World's Greatest Criminal Mind and So Long, Farewell and Isn't It a Crime? But can you deduce the name of the film? And whilst you're trying to work it out, let's hear the song 6 Inches of Face, which is a love song about a nun, of whom you can only see 6 inches of face because of her wimple, from the fantastic B-movie musical Apocalypse Cruise Ship Love Affair.
I don't believe in a heaven above, and certainly not an instantaneous love, but the tingling feeling I've got in my chest is either love at first sight or cardiac arrest. No, it's love, I know it. But why? Well, because of her. 'Cause of the way she... 'Cause she's got those, and she smells like... No, total mind blink. Just realised I don't know anything about this woman. If
think. Do some backing vocals and I'll think of something. This is 1 in a million, an exceptional case. 'Cause all that I've seen is 6 inches of face.
Ooh, 6 inches of face.
A seductive frown, 2 eyes, 2 lips, a pair of shoes, a huge black gown. 2 ears, 2 cheeks, 1 chin, 1 nose, 1 philtrum, all perfectly in place. Etched into my retina, I think I just fell in love with 6 inches.
6 inches,
6 inches of face.
Ooh, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. That's right.
I don't even know her, I don't know her name, but her face is picture perfect and literally a 6x6 frame. And God only knows what's under that dress, or if she's nice, but I could make an educated guess. She's probably got all the key organs, or she wouldn't look so fit. She couldn't walk without legs. She's got arms to a beat, and if she's got 2 legs, then she must have a bum. And if she wasn't a really, really, really nice person, then she wouldn't be a nun. 6 inches,
6 inches,
6 inches of face.
Oh, now you tell him, you tell him. Yeah, go ahead.
Stop, wait, stop the music, stop the music. You, put your fingers down. Hanks, what are you singing about?
Oh, nothing, no, I wasn't singing at all.
I heard you. You were singing about love, weren't you?
He was, sir, and I was doing the backing vocals, but I didn't mean it.
Shut up, Vittles.
Yeah, shut up, Vittles. You know the golden rule, don't you, Hanks?
Yes, sir. No falling in love with
Passengers. Ever.
Oh, but Kipton, she's so nice.
She's so nice. Where are you even from, man? You don't know, do you? Enough singing. Everyone out of here. Vittles, let's leave.
Yes, sir.
Six inches of face, not even a nick. Now I believe there's an angel on deck, struck by Cupid's bow. I'm truly hypnotized. She hit me at hello, but the metaphorical hello that her face said to my eyes. 6 inches of face. There we are. Apocalypse Cruise Ship Love Affair's wonderful song, 6 Inches of Face. And the question I asked was, what was the name of the 1986 Disney film featuring Vincent Price and Alan Young? And the answer is Basil, the Great Mouse Detective, one of my favourite Disney films. Now, in that film, Basil was voiced by Barry Ingham, who played in a lot of musicals, including opposite Angela Lansbury in Gypsy in London in 1973. In the film Basil, the Great Mouse Detective, also known as Basil of Baker Street, he played a Sherlock Holmes-style detective fighting Professor Rattigan, played by the wonderful Vincent Price, who sang both of those songs that I mentioned. However, Vincent Price, not often associated with musicals in the popular mind, had been in a musical only 3 years beforehand, in 1983, when he played Sir Despard Murgatroyd, in which Gilbert and Sullivan opera. And, as is usual, here's a song to give you some thinking time to answer that question. And this song is by Michael Gordon Shapiro and is, I'm delighted to say, a happy, happy tradition here on Musical Talk, because we try and play it every year at about this time. It's called Happy Holidays.
Happy holidays, happy holidays. I'm just here to say that I'm too cheap to send a card. I wish you lots of cheer throughout the coming year. But writing dear whoever 57 times is way too hard. If I sent you a card, you'd get it, then throw it away, admit it. Why waste all those stamps and spit? It seems much simpler just to quit and wish you happy holidays. I could have sent some cash your way or hired a horseman and a sleigh, but since it's free, I sent a song more thoughtful than a gift. Is the exercise of thrift. Not only is delivery swift, I saved a tree. Is that so wrong? Look, presents don't cause happiness. The wrapping paper makes a mess. The whole procedure causes stress. So let me do what I do best and wish you happy holidays. Happy holidays. You can still get me something, though.
There we are. Happy Holidays, the marvellous festive song by Michael Gordon Shapiro. And the question I asked beforehand, what was the name of the Gilbert and Sullivan opera, which Vincent Price had appeared in 1983 on television? And the answer is my favourite, Ruddigore, or The Witch's Curse. Nearly all the Gilbert and Sullivan operettas had subtitles, or secondary titles, and it came originally from 1887. We really have been ranging through the centuries in this episode of Musical Talk. And more sadly, we are coming to the end of this episode of Musical Talk because that was the last question. And it pleases me immensely that we've been able to ask questions which started off with Gilbert and Sullivan and Alfred E. Newman and have finished off with Gilbert and Sullivan. And so to make it properly circular and symmetrical, we're going to actually find a real link between Gilbert and Sullivan and Mad Magazine. In 1959, Mad Magazine ran a very excellent article called If Famous Authors Wrote the Comics. And in it, they imagined what it would be like if Gilbert and Sullivan had written the Dick Tracy cartoon. So there you have it. From the beginning of this quiz to the very end of this quiz, Gilbert and Sullivan and Mad Magazine have been inextricably interlinked. As have we, dear listener, as you have listened to me drone on in between these very excellent songs. But you'll be pleased to know that relief is at hand. And if on hearing those words your mind inadvertently stumbles across the phrase hand relief, that's your filthy mind, not mine. Gosh, we may be descending into lewdness, and that would never do. So let's bring this episode of Musical Talk to an end, and indeed this year of Musical Talk episodes equally to an end. So, on behalf of everybody involved with Musical Talk, may I wish you a very Merry Christmas, or whatever alternative you choose to celebrate, and a marvellous New Year in 2021. And if we're lucky, it will see a return and a revival, and possibly a renaissance of musical theatre after the doldrums of this terrible year of COVID. So, let's forget the past, go straight into the future, and may I wish you a Happy New Year. Goodbye. This episode of Musical Talk, researched, edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2020. Except for the songs where the copyright remains with each of the creators. And my enormous thanks go to each and every single one of them for allowing me to play their songs in episodes of Musical Talk over the last year or so, and of course again here in our Christmas quiz. And I must say it's been a privilege to hear these songs again and to play them in this episode. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Musical Talk Thos.